The stars burned cold above the forest moon, and Lyra watched them with eyes that held memories of centuries gone by. She stood among the ancient trees, her silver hair catching the light of distant suns, and beside her rested Emberwing the dragon, whose scales shimmered with colors that had no name in human language. The dragon was small compared to the legends of old, but his power was unmistakable. Anyone who looked into his eyes saw the depths of space itself reflected back at them. Lyra had been watching the humans for many years now. Ever since she escaped from the Galactic Dominion with Emberwing clutched close to her chest, fleeing through dimensions and across star systems that blurred together in her desperate flight. She had found Earth by accident, or perhaps by fate, and she had stayed because these humans reminded her of her own people before the Empire came, before everything burned. The Dominion was vast and cruel, spreading across 12 star systems like a plague that consumed everything it touched. They did not simply conquer worlds, they harvested them, strip mining not just resources, but the very essence of the civilizations they destroyed. Every species had something unique, and the Dominion took it all: DNA, technology, culture, history, all of it processed and absorbed into the Empire until nothing remained but dust and silence. Earth had caught their attention recently. The humans had refused to bow. Their leaders had said no when the Dominion demanded submission. And now the Empire was angry. They did not send fleets first. That was not their way. Instead, they sent the Shadowborn. The Shadowborn were killers, unlike any other in the galaxy. They moved between dimensions, phasing through walls and shields as if such things were mere suggestions. Their bodies were augmented with technology stolen from 100 conquered races, making them faster, stronger, deadlier than any natural being had right to be. Each one was paired with an artificial intelligence that predicted their targets' every move, every breath, every thought. The Shadowborn had never failed a mission, not once in 500 years. 3 Earth diplomats died in a single night. Ambassador Karen White on the colony world of New Hope, Governor Linda Martinez at a peace conference on the orbital station above Mars, Director Nicole Baker in her own bed in the capital city of New Geneva. Each death was silent, each death was precise, and each body bore the same mark: a black star burned into the forehead, a signature, a warning. Lyra felt the deaths ripple through the fabric of space like stones dropped into still water. She knew what was coming. She had seen it before on her own world when the Dominion decided to make examples of those who resisted. The Shadowborn would continue killing one leader at a time until Earth begged for mercy, and then the Dominion would accept their surrender and begin the harvesting. Emberwing stirred beside her, his tail coiling around the tree trunk. The dragon spoke directly into her mind without words. His thoughts were images and emotions, fire and fury and a deep abiding sorrow that matched her own. He wanted to act. He wanted to burn the assassins from existence. But Lyra held him back. Not yet, she whispered in her thoughts. Not yet on Earth, far below the forest moon. Dr. Maya Collins stood in a government building staring at holographic images of the 3 dead diplomats. She was the defense minister, a position she had never wanted, but had accepted because someone needed to think about protecting humanity from threats beyond their world. And now those threats had arrived with a vengeance. Maya was 40 years old with dark skin and eyes that rarely smiled anymore. She had spent her career preparing for war with other human factions, never truly believing that aliens would notice little Earth tucked away in its corner of the galaxy. But she had been wrong. The galaxy had noticed, and it was not kind. The bodies told a story that made her blood run cold. The assassins had bypassed every security system, walked through walls that should have been impenetrable, struck with weapons that left no trace except that terrible black star. The military had no answers. The intelligence agencies had no leads. Earth was blind and helpless against an enemy they could not see until it was too late. Maya made a decision that night. She left the capital and traveled to Nepal to the mountains where the old monastery stood. The journey took 12 hours by aircraft, and then another 3 on foot-climbing paths that had been forgotten by most of the world. But Maya remembered she had been here once before many years ago when she was young and foolish and thought she could change the world through force of will. The monastery was small, just a collection of stone buildings clinging to the mountainside, but it held a secret that the government officially denied. In these halls lived someone who should not exist in the modern age. Someone trained in arts that blended ancient wisdom with cutting-edge technology, a weapon that Maya had hoped never to unleash. Kira Tanaka sat in meditation when Maya arrived. The woman was 35 years old, with Japanese heritage visible in the shape of her face and the midnight black of her hair. She wore simple robes and her feet were bare despite the cold. Her eyes remained closed as Maya entered the chamber, but Kira knew she was there. Kira always knew Maya had found Kira 15 years ago, when the young woman was barely more than a child. Already her skills were legendary in certain circles. Already people whispered about the last true ninja, trained not just in ancient techniques, but enhanced with neural implants that accelerated her reflexes, gave her perfect spatial awareness, let her predict movements before they happened. The government had wanted to recruit her, turn her into a weapon, but Kira had refused. She had come here instead to find peace. Now Maya stood before her, former student, and laid out holographic images on the floor. The 3 dead diplomats, the black stars, the analysis that showed movement patterns beyond human capability, footage from security cameras that caught only blurs and shadows. Kira opened her eyes and studied the images in silence. When Kira finally spoke, her voice was soft but carried weight. She recognized some of the techniques. Maya blinked in surprise. How could Kira recognize alien assassination methods? But before she could ask, the air in the room changed, the temperature dropped, and silver light began to gather in the corner. Lyrelay stepped out of nowhere, walking between dimensions with the ease of breathing. Emberwing followed his small dragon form, coiling around her shoulders like a living scarf. His eyes glowed with inner fire. Maya reached for her weapon, but Kira held up a hand. Wait. The elf woman looked at Kira with ancient eyes that held galaxies within them. She spoke, and her voice was like music from a forgotten age. She told them of the dominion of the Shadowborn, of the harvesting that awaited Earth if they failed. She told them that she had been running for 300 years, carrying the last dragon of her people, fleeing an empire that had turned her entire civilization into raw materials for their war machine. But she was done running. Now she would fight, and she would help these humans fight too, because she had seen something in them that reminded her of home, a stubborn refusal to bow, a fire that burned bright even in the face of overwhelming darkness. Kira listened, and when Lyrelay finished speaking, the ninja stood. She had spent 15 years seeking peace, trying to escape the violence that had defined her youth. But some fights could not be avoided. Some enemies had to be faced, and if the Shadowborn were truly as dangerous as Lyrelay claimed, then Earth needed every advantage it could find. Maya watched as an alliance formed before her eyes. An elf woman carrying 3 centuries of grief and rage, a dragon whose very existence defied the laws of physics, a ninja who had tried to leave war behind but found it waiting for her anyway. Together they would face the Shadowborn. Together they would show the galactic dominion that Earth was not helpless, that humanity had teeth, and that some worlds fought back. Kira established her base in an abandoned space station orbiting Mars. The facility had been built decades ago during the first wave of colonial expansion, then left to drift when funding dried up, and newer stations were constructed. Now it served as the perfect hiding place. Far enough from Earth to avoid detection, close enough to respond when the Shadowborn struck again. Lirelei walked through the station with Emberwing perched on her shoulder, examining the human technology with curiosity. She had seen countless civilizations and their devices, but humans had a particular way of building things. Practical, efficient, lacking in elegance perhaps, but effective. She approved. The elf woman began teaching Kira about the Shadowborn, and what she revealed made the ninja realize how unprepared Earth truly was. These assassins were not simply skilled killers. They were weapons forged from the stolen essence of conquered species. Their bones were reinforced with metals from a world where gravity was 3 times Earth normal. Their muscles were enhanced with genetic material from predators that hunted in the dark between stars. Their nervous systems were accelerated by neural networks that processed information faster than any organic brain, but their most dangerous ability was the dimensional shift. The Shadowborn could phase out of normal space for brief moments, slipping between the cracks in reality. This let them walk through walls, avoid attacks, appear behind their targets without warning. The technology came from Lyrelei's own people. The elves had developed it for exploration, for reaching places that existed outside normal dimensions. The Dominion had stolen it and turned it into a weapon. Kira listened and absorbed every detail. She had trained her whole life to face human opponents, to predict human movements and exploit human weaknesses. But the Shadowborn were not human. They thought differently, moved differently, killed differently. She would need to adapt. Emberwing watched the ninja with interest. The dragon had lived for over 1,000 years, and he had seen many warriors. Most were loud and boastful creatures who relied on strength and fury. But Kira was different. She moved like water, like shadow. She reminded him of the elven hunters from his homeworld, the ones who could track prey across dimensional boundaries. The dragon made a decision. He approached Kira one morning while she practiced her forms and breathed silver flame over her weapons. The fire did not burn. Instead, it sank into the metal, infusing it with what Lirelei called void energy. This was power that existed between dimensions, energy that could harm beings while they phased through reality. Kira held up her blade and watched it shimmer with otherworldly light. She had spent years mastering conventional weapons, but this was something new. Something that might actually work against an enemy, that could turn intangible at will. She bowed to Emberwing in gratitude, and the dragon rumbled with approval. Meanwhile, on Earth, Maya Collins worked with military intelligence to set a trap. They needed to draw out the Shadowborn, needed to face them on ground of their own choosing. So they leaked false information through channels they knew the Dominion was monitoring. A secret meeting of the Colonial Senate would take place on Europa Jupiter's ice moon. All of Earth's remaining leadership would gather in one place to discuss surrender terms. It was obvious, bait, perhaps too obvious. But Maya was counting on the Shadowborn being arrogant. The assassins had never failed. They had killed for 5 centuries without ever facing real resistance. Why would they suspect a trap now? Lirelei studied the Shadowborn's previous kills and found a pattern. The assassins always scouted their targets for exactly 72 hours before striking. They would observe, learn every habit, every routine, every security measure. And then they would attack at the moment of maximum vulnerability, 3 days. That was how long the team had to prepare. Kira arrived on Europa 2 weeks before the fake meeting. She explored every tunnel, every chamber, every hidden passage in the ice. The moon was a maze of corridors carved by mining operations, and she learned them all, memorized every turn, every dead end, every place where sound echoed strangely. She would need every advantage. The Shadowborn came exactly on schedule. Kira felt its presence before she saw it, a disturbance in the air, a coldness that had nothing to do with temperature. She was in the lower tunnels, when it appeared materializing from nothing like smoke-given form. The assassin was tall and thin, wearing armor that seemed to absorb light. Its face was hidden behind a mask, But Kira could feel its eyes studying her, calculating her threat level, dismissing her as insignificant. That was a mistake. The Shadowborn moved, and Kira barely dodged. The assassin was faster than anything she had ever faced. It phased through a wall, appeared behind her, struck with blades that cut through space itself. Only her neural implants saved her, giving her just enough warning to roll aside as the weapons passed through where her head had been. The fight became a blur of motion. Kira used the tunnels to her advantage, leading the assassin into narrow passages where its speed mattered less. She listened to the sound of its breathing, the whisper of its movement, through air. When it phased through walls, she tracked it by the disturbance it created, the way ice crystals fell from the ceiling. But the Shadowborn was adapting too. It began to predict her movements to counter her tactics. Kira found herself being driven back step by step. Her conventional weapons passed through the assassin whenever it shifted dimensions. She was fighting an enemy she could not hurt. Then she remembered the Void Fire Blade. Kira drew the weapon infused with Emberwing's silver flame, and the Shadowborn paused. It could sense the energy, could feel the threat. The assassin attacked with renewed fury, trying to end the fight. Before she could use the strange weapon, Kira waited for her moment. The Shadowborn lunged and she sidestepped, drove the blade forward, felt it sink into flesh that existed half in and half out of reality. The assassin screamed a sound that echoed across multiple dimensions. Its form flickered, became solid, became transparent, became solid again. The dimensional technology in its body was disrupted by the void energy. The Shadowborn fell, and Kira stood over it, breathing hard. The assassin was dying, but it laughed a wet, bubbling sound. It told her she had killed the weakest of 12. It told her the others were already adapting, learning from its death. It told her they knew about Lyrelay, knew she was helping the humans. And then it told her something that made her blood freeze. The Dominion wanted the elf woman alive, wanted to recapture her and learn how she had escaped them. The Shadowborn died, and Kira was left alone in the ice tunnels with more questions than answers. She contacted Maya, reported the kill, reported the warning. The defense minister listened in silence, and then ordered Kira to return to the station. They needed to talk to Lyrelay. They needed the truth. That night in the Mars orbital station, Kira confronted the elf woman. She demanded to know why the Dominion was so interested in her. What made Lyrelay special enough to chase for 300 years? What had she done? Lyrelay looked at Emberwing, and the dragon nodded. Then she began to speak. She told them of her past, of who she had been before she became a refugee. She had been a scientist, one of the brightest minds of her generation, and she had worked for the Dominion. The revelation hit like a physical blow. Lyrelay had helped create the Shadowborn program. She had developed the dimensional shift technology, had designed the augmentation process, had solved the problems that let the Dominion turn living beings into perfect killers. She had done it willingly, at first believing she was advancing science, creating tools for exploration. But then she discovered what the Empire truly intended. The Shadowborn were not explorers. They were weapons of genocide. The Dominion used them to eliminate entire leadership structures, to break the will of conquered peoples, to harvest civilizations efficiently, and her technology made it all possible. Lyrelay had tried to destroy her research, tried to stop the program, but she was one person against an empire. So she fled. She stole the last dragon egg from the Imperial vaults, the only one that had not been dissected for research. She ran through dimensions and across stars with Emberwing newly hatched and clinging to her. And for 300 years she had been running until now, until she found Earth and saw in humanity a chance for redemption, a chance to undo some of the harm she had caused. She could not save her own people, but perhaps she could save these humans. Perhaps she could teach them to fight back against the weapons she had helped create. Kira listened to the confession and felt anger rise in her chest. This elf woman had created the Shadowborn, had made the monsters that were hunting humanity, and now she offered her help as if that made it right. But then Kira looked at Lyra Lee's eyes and saw the weight of 3 centuries of guilt and grief, and she understood. This was not about redemption. This was about atonement. The city of New Geneva sprawled across the valley, its towers gleaming in the morning sun. It was Earth's capital, the heart of human government, and home to 12 million people. The city had been built to represent humanity's best, a symbol of unity and progress and hope. For the future, the Galactic Dominion decided to burn it. 5 Shadowborn materialized in the central market at noon when the crowds were thickest. They did not hide. They wanted to be seen. Wanted humanity to watch as their leaders died in broad daylight. Wanted to break the will to resist. The assassins moved through the crowd like dancers of death. Their blades found targets with surgical precision. Mayor Amanda Torres fell first. Her throat cut before her bodyguards could react. Senator Helen Price died next. Her body dropping in the middle of a speech, Governor Kate Wilson tried to run, but a Shadowborn appeared in front of her and drove a blade through her heart. People screamed and fled, but there was nowhere to go. The assassins were everywhere, moving faster than human eyes could track, phasing through buildings and barriers. Earth's security forces responded within minutes, but their weapons passed through the Shadowborn harmlessly. The assassins laughed as bullets went through their bodies, as energy beams dissipated against their shields. Then the sky darkened. Emberwing descended from the clouds, and the dragon was angry. He had been small and peaceful on the forest moon, but here in battle he seemed to grow larger. His scales blazed with cosmic fire. His eyes burned like dying stars. His roar shook buildings and shattered windows across 3 city blocks. The Shadowborn looked up, and for the first time in their existence, they felt fear. The dragon unleashed his fire, and it was not normal flame. This was energy drawn from the heart of creation itself. Silver and gold and colors that human eyes could not name. The fire did not simply burn. It unmade matter at the molecular level, dissolving it back into base particles. 2 Shadowborn were caught in the blast, and they did not even have time to scream. They simply ceased to exist. The remaining 3 assassins retreated, phasing through dimensions to escape, but Emberwing could sense their movement. The dragon breathed fire into the spaces between reality, and the Shadowborn screamed as void energy burned them even while intangible. They fled into the tunnels beneath the city, and Emberwing let them go. He had made his point. The city was in chaos. Emergency services rushed to help the wounded. Military forces secured the area. News cameras broadcast everything across all human colonies. The attack, the deaths, the dragon. The entire galaxy watched as Earth showed it could fight back. But the political fallout was immediate. Senator Lisa Hartman called for an emergency session of the Colonial Senate. She stood before her fellow leaders and demanded surrender. 3 people were dead, 2 Shadowborn destroyed, but the Empire had thousands more. Earth could not win this fight. Better to submit now before more blood was spilled. Maya Collins stood to respond. She spoke of the Dominion's harvesting, of what happened to conquered worlds, of how submission meant the end of humanity as a free species. She showed them footage from Lyrali's memories, worlds reduced to processing plants, species rendered into genetic material, civilizations erased from existence. The Senate chamber fell silent as they watched. Then Maya played her final card. She revealed the existence of Kira and Lyrale. She told them about the Voidfire weapons, about the weakness in Shadowborn technology. She promised them that Earth could fight, that Earth would fight, and most importantly, that Earth fighting would inspire others. The vote was close, but Maya won. Earth would resist. In the tunnels beneath New Geneva, the three surviving Shadowborn regrouped. They had lost 2 of their number in seconds, a reality that seemed impossible. They sent a priority transmission to the Dominion fleet, requesting support, requesting backup. Requesting the original 12 High Command responded with orders: track and eliminate the dragon, capture the elf woman alive, and kill anyone who got in their way. The Shadowborn began their hunt. They followed Emberwing's energy signature, tracked it through the city and beyond. One of them was named Vax. A veteran of 200 years and countless kills, he specialized in tracking prey across dimensions, and he picked up Lyra Lee's trail within hours. The elf woman had a unique dimensional signature, something about her biology that made her stand out. Vax followed the trail to a warehouse district on the edge of the city. He phased through walls, moved silently through shadows, approached his target, and walked directly into Kira's trap. The ninja had been waiting. She had known the Shadowborn would come, for Lirelei had prepared the entire district as a killing ground, every building wired with sensors, every corridor mapped, every escape route calculated. She struck before Vax could react, her void fire blade cutting through his dimensional shift and biting into his armor. Vax stumbled back. Shocked that someone had hurt him, he counterattacked with brutal efficiency, his blade seeking Kira's throat. But she was not there anymore. The ninja moved like smoke, using every trick Lirelei had taught her. She existed in the blind spots of perception, the moments between thoughts. The fight raged through the warehouse. Vax using his superior strength and technology, Kira using her training and the environment. She led him into a storage room where she had prepared a special surprise, high-intensity magnetic fields that disrupted the dimensional shift technology. For 5 seconds, Vax was trapped in normal space, unable to phase. 5 seconds was all Kira needed. Her blade found his chest, found his heart. The void energy spread through his body, disrupting every augmentation, every enhancement. Vax fell and did not rise, but the victory was costly. The other 2 Shadowborn had been watching, had been learning. They attacked together, rushing Kira from 2 directions. She managed to wound one, but the other, a female assassin named Silendra, drove a quantum blade into Emberwing's side. The dragon had been circling overhead, providing overwatch. Now he roared in pain and crashed to the ground. His blood, silver and luminescent, burned through concrete and steel. Lirelei felt his agony through their bond, and something inside her broke. The elf woman screamed, and it was not a human sound. It was telepathic broadcast across the solar system, a cry of anguish and rage that made every sensitive mind within 100 million kilometers clutch their heads in pain. She stopped holding back, stopped restraining the power she had been hiding for 300 years. Lyrelei's body began to glow. Her eyes became pools of starlight. Her silver hair lifted and moved as if in an invisible wind. She raised her hand, and Silendra tried to phase away, tried to escape, but Lirelei reached into the space between dimensions and grabbed her. The elf woman's magic tore Silendra apart at the atomic level. The Shadowborn screamed as her very existence was unraveled, reduced to component particles that scattered on the wind. The 3rd assassin saw this and fled, ran as fast as his augmented body could carry him, diving through dimensions in blind panic. Lirelei collapsed beside Emberwing, cradling the dragon's head in her lap. The wound was deep, and silver blood pooled around them. Kira approached cautiously, not sure if the elf woman would attack her too. But Lirelei was weeping, speaking in a language that predated human civilization, begging Emberwing to hold on. The dragon opened one eye and looked at his friend. He sent thoughts without words, telling her that he would be fine, that dragons did not die so easily, but his body was failing, and they both knew it. Kira called for medical support, called for anyone who might know how to help. But there were no dragon doctors on Earth. There was no one who could save him. Emberwing closed his eye and his breathing slowed, and Lyrelay held him and wept for the last piece of her world that was slipping away. The decision came suddenly in a meeting room deep beneath the Capitol. Maya Collins stood before a holographic map of Dominion space and spoke the words that would change everything. They were done playing defense. It was time to take the fight to the enemy. Kira sat at the table listening to the plan. The target was Vorsheka, the Dominion homeworld, deep in enemy territory surrounded by defense stations and patrol fleets. On its surface stood the Shadowborn training facility, the place where new assassins were forged from captured beings. If they destroyed it, they could cripple the program, maybe buy Earth enough time to prepare for the inevitable retaliation. It was a suicide mission. Everyone in the room knew it, but Maya argued that every moment the Dominion spent defending their homeworld was a moment they were not attacking Earth. Every resource diverted to internal security was a resource not pointed at humanity. And if they could rescue even some of the beings being processed into Shadowborn, it would be worth the cost. Kira volunteered immediately. She had killed 4 Shadowborn now, and each one had shown her something new about their weaknesses. She understood how they moved, how they thought she was the logical choice to lead the infiltration. But she would not go alone. Captain Amy Rodriguez stepped forward, a pilot with more combat hours than anyone in the fleet. Her body was enhanced with cybernetics that let her interface directly with spacecraft. She could fly anything the Dominion had and fly it better than its original crew. Dr. Elena Park volunteered next, a xenobiologist who had been studying the recovered Shadowborn bodies, learning their augmentation systems, understanding the technology that made them possible. She spoke 8 alien languages and could pass as 3 different species with the right disguises. Commander Kate Morrison completed the team, former Special Forces with experience in hostile territory insertion. She had led Black Ops on Mars during the colony wars before humanity realized they had bigger enemies to fight. She knew how to get into places that did not want visitors. Lyrelay insisted on joining them. The elf woman had been quiet since Emberwing's wounding. The dragon was alive but barely. His body lay in a shielded chamber in the station, his breathing shallow, his eyes closed. The doctors said he might recover in time. But time was the one thing they did not have. Lyrelay wanted revenge. She wanted to hurt the Dominion the way they had hurt her, and she knew Vorsheka better than anyone. She had worked there once, had walked its halls, had helped build the very facility they were about to destroy. The team took a captured Dominion vessel, a sleek cruiser that had been seized during a border skirmish. Earth's best hackers reprogrammed its systems, gave it a false identity in the Empire's network. They would pose as a transport returning from the frontier, carrying new subjects for the Shadowborn program. The journey took 3 weeks. Moving through Dominion space required careful navigation, following approved routes, checking in at designated waypoints. Any deviation would trigger alerts and bring patrol ships. They passed the first checkpoint without incident. Amy flying the ship with casual confidence, while Lyrelay handled communications in flawless Dominion dialect. The second checkpoint was harder. A customs inspector came aboard wanting to verify their cargo. Elena showed him fabricated documents claiming they carried prisoners from a recently conquered colony. The inspector seemed suspicious, but Lyrelay stepped into view and spoke a recognition code that made his eyes widen. He saluted and left without further questions. Apparently, her old security clearances still worked in the system. The third checkpoint almost killed them. A patrol captain recognized the ship as one reported stolen. He demanded they power down weapons and prepare to be boarded. Kate wanted to fight, but Amy shook her head. They were outnumbered and outgunned. Instead, she triggered a pre-programmed distress signal claiming engine failure. The patrol captain believed it and sent a repair crew. Lyrelay met the repair crew at the airlock and used her magic to cloud their minds. They saw what she wanted them to see: damaged systems, innocent crew. A simple malfunction, They repaired the engines and left. The team breathed again and continued toward Vorsheka. The homeworld appeared like a jewel against the void. Its surface was covered in gleaming spires and floating cities. Orbital platforms ringed the planet, bristling with weapons that could vaporize a fleet. Amy guided the ship through the traffic patterns, following approach vectors that kept them looking routine, unremarkable. Lyreley stared at the planet below, and memories flooded back. She had lived here once, had thought of it as home before she learned what it truly was. Now she saw it for what it really was, a monument to genocide built on the bones of 1,000 conquered worlds. The Shadowborn facility was located in a mountain range on the southern continent. Amy landed the ship at a civilian spaceport 10 kilometers away, and the team proceeded on foot. They wore local clothing, carried forged identification. They looked like workers or tourists or merchants. No one gave them a second glance. Kate led them through the mountains using routes that avoided security sensors. Elena had hacked the facility's network and downloaded patrol schedules, guard rotations, blind spots in their coverage. They moved during shift changes when attention was divided. The facility entrance was carved into the mountain itself, a massive door that could withstand orbital bombardment. Lyreley approached it and placed her hand on a scanner. Her biometric data was still in the system after 300 years. The door opened. Inside was horror made manifest, row after row of containment pods, each one holding a living being in various stages of transformation. Some were barely changed, their bodies whole and unmarked. Others were already half-machine, their flesh replaced by synthetic materials. All of them were conscious. All of them were screaming silently through neural inhibitors. Elena found a data terminal and began downloading everything. The full Shadowborn augmentation process, the technology specifications, the neural conditioning protocols, the mortality rates. 90% of subjects died during the procedure. Those who survived lost everything that made them individuals. Their personalities erased, their memories rewritten. Kira moved through the facility with growing rage. She saw beings from dozens of species, creatures she had never imagined, all being broken down and rebuilt into weapons. She wanted to free them, wanted to destroy every pod, every machine, every piece of this nightmare. Then Elena made a discovery buried in the data files. The augmentation could be reversed. It was difficult, required specialized equipment, but it was possible. Any Shadowborn converted within the last year could potentially be saved. Their original personalities recovered, their bodies healed. Kate checked her chronometer. They had been inside for 20 minutes. They needed to plant the charges and leave. But if they destroyed the facility now, all these beings in the pods would die. And any recently converted Shadowborn would lose their only chance at freedom. Kira faced an impossible choice. Complete the mission as planned, or try to save the beings trapped here. The first option was safer, gave them the best chance of escape. The second was risky, would take time they did not have. But it was the right thing to do. She was still deciding when alarms began to blare throughout the facility. Their presence had been detected. Security doors slammed shut, trapping them inside. Armed guards poured into the corridors, and overhead speakers announced intruder alerts. The team fought their way deeper into the facility, Kate providing covering fire, while Amy worked to override door controls. Elena frantically tried to trigger a mass release of the containment pods. Lyreley used her magic to turn guards against each other to create illusions and confusion. They reached the central power core, a massive chamber where energy flowed from the planet's core to power the augmentation systems. Kira planted charges, while the others held the entrance. But there were too many guards, too many. Shadowborn training instructors who knew how to counter their tactics. Emberwing made the choice for them. The dragon had been recovering in the medical bay on the station, but he felt Lyreley's danger through their bond. He drew on reserves of strength he should not have had and teleported across light years, appearing in the power core chamber in a flash of silver fire. The dragon was weak from his wounds, but he was still magnificent. He looked at Lyrelay one last time and sent her a thought that was pure love. Then he flew into the heart of the power core and released every ounce of energy his body contained. The explosion was visible from orbit, a pillar of silver fire that punched through the mountain and into space. The entire facility ceased to exist in an instant, vaporized by cosmic flame. The explosion disrupted dimensional technology for 100 kilometers. Every Shadowborn in range felt their augmentations fail, felt themselves become mortal again. The team escaped in the chaos, stealing a shuttle and blasting into orbit. As the mountain collapsed, Amy flew like a woman possessed, dodging debris and defensive fire. Kate and Elena returning fire with everything they had. Kira held Lyrelay as the elf woman wept her bond with Emberwing, severed her last connection to her homeworld gone. But as they fled, something impossible happened. A voice echoed in Lyrelay's mind. Emberwing's voice. He was not dead. Dragons did not die. They transformed. He had become something new, scattered across dimensions, existing in the spaces between reality. Still aware, still protecting her always, the Dominion fleet arrived at Earth 6 weeks after the destruction of the Shadowborn. Our facility 300 warships, each one capable of reducing a planet to slag. They came for revenge. They came for blood. They came to make an example that the galaxy would never forget. Leading them were the original 12 Shadowborn. The first ones, the ones who had trained all the others. They were ancient beings, some over 1,000 years old, veterans of countless wars. They had killed on 100 worlds, had ended civilizations with their bare hands. They were the Empire's most prized weapons, and now Earth would face them all at once. Maya Collins stood in the command center, watching the fleet approach on holographic displays. Around her Earth's defenders prepared for the final battle. Every ship in the human navy had been called home. Every soldier issued weapons enhanced with void fire technology. Every citizen old enough to fight given basic training in resisting dimensional intrusions. The people of Earth had changed in the week since Kira's team returned. Dr. Elena Park had shared everything she learned about Shadowborn augmentation and how to reverse it. The knowledge spread across all human colonies. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers, not to become soldiers, but to become protectors. People who would stand between the Dominion and their families. Kira trained them. She taught them what Lyrelay had taught her: how to exist in the blind spots of perception, how to move between moments, how to fight enemies that could phase through walls. She created a new generation of warriors, blending human determination with elven wisdom, a fusion of cultures fighting for survival. Lyrelay was different now. Emberwing's transformation had changed her. She could feel the dragon scattered across dimensions, and she could channel his power, could pull energy from the spaces between realities and use it as a weapon. But every time she did, it cost her. She was burning through her immortality, using centuries of life force to fuel her magic. She knew she would not survive this battle, but she had made peace with that. The Dominion fleet entered orbit and broadcast a simple message: surrender or die. Maya Collins answered with a single word that would echo through history: no. The 12 original Shadowborn descended to the surface, materializing in key locations across the planet. Their mission was surgical: strike at command centers, eliminate leadership, break the will to resist. It was the same tactic they had used on 1,000 worlds, and it had never failed. But Earth was ready. Kira faced their leader, Jenkara, in the ruins of an ancient temple. Outside New Geneva, the Shadowborn was older than human civilization. His body was more machine than flesh now. His original species had been forgotten even by him. He looked at Kira with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall, and he almost pitied her. The battle was beyond anything Kira had experienced before. Jenkara did not simply fight. He orchestrated reality itself. His blades cut through space and time. His movements created afterimages that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. He had perfected the art of killing over a millennium. But Kira had something he did not. She had hope. She had purpose. She fought not for conquest or duty, but for the future of her species. Every strike was precise. Every movement calculated. She used everything. Lyrelai had taught her, everything her own training had instilled. She became a weapon of pure will. They fought across the city, moving faster than cameras could track. Their battle-carved scars into buildings left craters in streets. Around them the war raged. Other Shadowborn fighting other defenders. The sky burned with ship combat, as Earth's navy engaged the Dominion fleet. Then Jankara did something unexpected. He stopped fighting. He looked at Kira and spoke. He told her a truth that changed everything. He was not a volunteer. He had never chosen this. The original 12 had been prisoners, political dissidents, rebels against the Dominion. They had been given a choice between execution and transformation. And once transformed, they had been enslaved by neural implants that overrode their will. For 1,000 years, Jankara had been a slave, forced to kill, forced to destroy, watching himself commit atrocities while screaming silently inside his own mind. He wanted to die, had wanted to die for centuries, but the implants would not let him. Even that choice was denied. Kira lowered her blade. She told him about Elena Park's research, about the reversal process, about freedom. Jankara laughed, but it was a broken sound. After 1,000 years, could he even remember who he had been? Could the damage be undone? But Kira offered him something he had not felt in lifetimes. A choice, a real choice. Trust her and maybe find freedom, or continue as a slave until death finally claimed him. Jankara chose freedom. The ancient Shadowborn transmitted a signal to the other 11. His access codes, his command clearance. A message that Elena had prepared, a virus that would disable the control implants one by one. The original 12 felt the chains break, felt their minds become their own again. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Shadowborn turned on their masters. Ships that had been bombing cities suddenly found assassins materializing on their bridges, eliminating commanders. Dominion fleet coordination collapsed as vessels turned on each other. The invasion became chaos. Lyrelai saw her chance. She reached into the dimensional spaces where Emberwing existed and pulled. Pulled with all her strength. Pulled with all her remaining life force. The dragon answered, manifesting not as a physical form, but as pure energy, a constellation of silver fire that filled the sky above Earth. The Dominion flagship tried to flee, but Lyrelai would not allow it. She drew on Emberwing's power, drew on her own fading existence, and struck. The flagship did not just explode, it was unmade, erased from reality so completely that it had never existed. The crew, the weapons, the very atoms that composed it scattered across dimensions into nothingness. The cost was everything. Lyrelai's physical form dissolved, becoming energy, becoming light. She transformed just as Emberwing had, becoming something beyond mortal comprehension. A guardian spirit bound to Earth, forever watching over the world she had died to protect. The battle ended. The remaining Dominion ships retreated or surrendered. The invasion was broken. Earth had survived. In the aftermath, Jankara and the freed Shadowborn chose to stay. They shared intelligence about the Dominion, about conquered worlds, about resistance movements waiting for a sign. The galaxy learned that Earth, a single planet, had defeated the empires. Most feared weapons, Captain Amy Rodriguez was promoted to admiral, tasked with building a liberation fleet. Humans and freed Shadowborn working together, carrying hope to oppressed worlds. Dr. Elena Park established medical facilities to help former Shadowborn recover, to undo the augmentations when possible, to heal minds broken by centuries of slavery. Commander Kate Morrison trained Earth's new defenders. teaching them to protect not just their world, but any world that asked for help. Maya Collins addressed the Colonial Senate. She spoke of sacrifice of Liralai and Emberwing, of all those who fought of the cost of freedom. The galaxy was watching. Earth had shown that resistance was possible. Now other worlds would follow, and Kira returned to her monastery. But not to hide. She opened its doors to students, human and alien former Shadowborn, and freed slaves, teaching them not assassination, but protection, creating a new tradition that honored the lost civilizations of the galaxy. On quiet nights she sometimes saw silver fire dancing in the sky, shapes that might have been a dragon and an elf woman. Scientists said it was aurora effects or dimensional echoes, but Kira knew better. Liralai and Emberwing had not died. They had transformed, had become guardians existing in the spaces between realities forever, watching over the world they saved, forever, ready to defend it if the need arose. Earth had survived, and in surviving, had ignited a spark that would spread across the galaxy, a message transmitted to every conquered world, a simple truth. If one planet could resist, then anyone could. The Dominion had deployed their elite assassins. Earth had responded with a ninja, and in doing so had changed the fate of civilizations. The galaxy would never be the same.